What I'm going to present to you can be found in my book, The Klein Method of Early Reading Mastery. A couple of chapters that I have in my book, which I think you'll find interesting, and which will cover the topics that I'm going to cover today. How a child teaches himself the alphabet. One of the themes that runs through everything I do is that the child teaches himself to read. That is so obviously clear to me. It is so clear to me. And our job is to help them teach themselves how to teach themselves the alphabet, how to teach themselves to decode. So we know that phonemic awareness is the most important thing we've ever learned about reading ever. And we know that reading for all children begins with phonemic awareness, which is the ability of the child to hear. Really, it's a perception. It's not really hearing. The ear is involved, but it's a brain perception. It's the ability to perceive and manipulate the sounds in spoken words. The phoneme is the smallest unit of speech in spoken language. Cat has 3 phonemes. Boot, although it's spelled with 4 letters, it only has 3 phonemes. Children who begin reading instruction with strong phonemic awareness have greater success learning the alphabet and learning how to read. Phonemic awareness is a strong, consistent predictor of later reading achievement. Each lesson we present to a child needs to be based on that child's ability to isolate and perceive individual sounds or phonemes. Now, what this tells us is that all of our instruction, even with 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, second graders, all of our reading instruction needs to move from speech to print. Speech to print. Sound to symbol. This is one that Montessorians understand. Concrete to abstract, because you have a lot of wonderful mathematical materials in your classroom. And what's the principle that we've all learned is that we give a child concrete activity first to let him hold and touch and count beads and bars and cubes. And then we introduce the abstract symbols. Now, how does that relate to language? Well, sound is concrete. It is vibration. And when I even just think about a sound, my body is vibrating. So it is concrete. I'm going to talk very briefly about rhyming. Rhyming does not directly relate to reading. And if a first grade teacher or a second grade teacher raises their hand and says, well, I still have a child that's not rhyming, my answer to her is, you have bigger fish to fry. However, for a preschool classroom, 3- and 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, we want to have rhyming in the classroom. It's fun. It's sort of a tickling of the ear. And it is a stimulation of that part of the brain that deals with sounds in spoken language. Except instead of talking about the individual tiny phonemes, we're talking about chunks of sound. Now, here's my suggestion. My suggestion is to teach children specific rhymes. And that is the best way to teach them how to rhyme. I'm not trying to get children to rhyme. That's going to happen in due course. Every child is different. The amount of repetition the child needs is very different for every other child. But my suggestion is to teach children specific rhymes. And let me show you it. I might have a stack of cards of rhyming pictures, and I just spend 20 seconds in the morning at some point during the day flashing cards. Mouse, house, and all the children call out mouse, house. Cat, hat, and they call out cat, hat. Pear, bear. Plow, cow. I go through this set. It takes me 20 seconds. Maybe there are 12 or 15 pair, and I'm done. I have other things to do. But the interesting thing is when I put up mouse the next day, I have at least half the children calling out house. When I hold up cat on the 3rd day, all the children are saying hat. When I hold up pear, they all say bear. The bottom line is it's very easy to teach children specific rhymes. And then we have something for them to do, don't we? Now, does that mean that they can rhyme? No. Does that mean they can recognize rhymes? No. It just means they know a specific set of rhymes. So now instead of me constantly, and I can continue feeding them new rhymes, but now with their own activities in a perfect Montessori lesson that they can choose from the shelf, once the teacher shows them how to do it, they are now feeding their own brain these rhymes. So they're stimulating the part of the brain that is the rhyming brain, and all of a sudden they start driving you crazy with rhyming, which is a good thing. Even first grade teachers need to have rhyming things in their classroom, because you're going to have some kids walk in who've never been in a Montessori classroom. They haven't had schooling. They just need to have something to do. This is pretty simple, isn't it? It's got activity. They can choose it from the shelf. It's got manipulatives. So that's a game that you might be interested in. One of the games I have is called Do They Rhyme? And I've been working with a lot of parents who have 3- and 4-year-olds and they can't rhyme yet. So I'm trying to find different ways to give the, materials to the parents that the child can do at home. So I said to a couple of parents, I said, look, I'm going to give you the rhyming set, the do they rhyme, yes or no. But I only want you to choose the ones to begin with that do rhyme, just the ones that do rhyme, and let the child work with those. So you can see how a 3-year-old might enjoy putting a game piece on the thumbs up on all 24 cards because they all rhyme. So it's another way for them to actually learn specific rhymes like pear, bear, house, mouse, cat, hat, lock, clock. Okay. Beginning sound isolation is hugely important. And we're going to explore that. We need children who can look at house and say, ha, who can look at zebra and say, zzz, who can look at banana and say, b, who can touch the table and say, t, why. If we have a child who can look at bear and say, b, then we have a child that can look at that black squiggly abstract symbol and understand that it's a b. It doesn't mean that they've learned it. It doesn't mean they'll remember it tomorrow. It just means they understand it. The alphabetic principle, the sounds of spoken language are represented by abstract symbols we call letters. So I want to reach a point where the child, the individual child, can look at bear and slice off that beginning sound. To appreciate the alphabetic significance of letters, children must gain conscious access to phonemes. And here's the principle that I think is so important. We teach the alphabetic principle before we teach the alphabet. So I'll tell parents, look, when you're driving in the car, ask Thomas to look out the window. What does Thomas see? He sees a bus. So mom says, oh, bus. What do you see, Veronica? Well, I see a dog. And mom says, dog. So the concept is we're going to model the slicing off of beginning sounds of words. Hundreds and hundreds of times from day one with 3-year-olds. Now, it's not the most important thing you're going to do. You have a lot of things you have to do. But it's one of those things you want to do consistently, even with 3-year-olds, because trust me, you'll see as I go through my presentation, when you have a 3-year-old, certainly with a 4-year-old who can isolate beginning sounds, the alphabet opens up, the whole world of the alphabet opens up. So I teach beginning sounds by playing the bingo game. Who has a monkey? Who has buttons? Let me see if I can find this. Here we go. Who has monkey? Now, the trick here is when a child puts his game piece on monkey, I want him to say monkey. Who has chair? Veronica has chair. The reason I want Veronica to say turtle when she puts a game piece on, or turkey, is because her voice is more important to her brain than my voice. Number one. Number two, I say turkey, she says turkey, and all the other children who might be in my small group all hear her say turkey. So it's a multiplication of the opportunities for a brain, the child's brain, to hear the slicing off of beginning sounds. And while you're playing the bingo game, of course, the children are learning the vocabulary on those cards. And even if you have a child that doesn't speak English that well, and you say, who has monkey? Well, he may has no idea what a monkey is. You just say, there it is, Thomas. There's the monkey. So you're teaching them as you go. You might recognize the beautiful Royal Road to Reading cards. Now, when a child can, on his own, isolate beginning sounds, then we're going to use those bingo cards as an independent beginning sound isolation activity. Veronica, we're going to put a game piece in the box. What's the beginning sound of sun? And she says, "S." Right. Let's see. I'm going to take a turn first. I'm going to find another picture that starts with "s." Okay. Okay, let's put a game piece in the box. B, bird. What else starts with B? Right, B, book. My turn. B, bear. Your turn. So you get the idea. I take a turn, she takes a turn. I want to be sure that she understands how to play the game, because I know she has the skill to play the game, which is beginning sound isolation. Now, these young children, 3, 4, 5 years old, they're going to also do hammer, even though it doesn't go with B, bird. So big deal. The whole point of the game is for them to practice beginning sound isolation, not that they have to do the game perfectly, if that makes sense to you. I have, over the last 25 years, been able to take Montessori concepts and principles to the public school world, telling them about choice and activity, choice of activities, repetition, movement, hands-on learning, independence. And I've done it without calling it Montessori. I think that calling it Montessori and trying to preach Montessori would be counterproductive to what I was trying to do in helping these teachers in the classroom. Perfect activity for kindergarten and first graders. For a young child in a young early childhood classroom, I might even, again, take only the ones that actually do have the same beginning sound and put them in a box first, so that children can just practice isolating the beginning sounds. It's really good practice, and then understanding that that's just the same. Boot and bird, yes, thumbs up. Bear and ball, yes, thumbs up. So the whole point of this is the alphabetic principle. We want the child to understand this relationship between sound and symbol, between speech and print. And we want to teach the alphabetic principle before we teach the alphabet. The beginning sound isolation is the open door to the alphabet. It is the open door to the alphabet. Veronica, what's the beginning sound of goat? And she says G. I say, okay. Well, Mr. Goat is telling us that this letter says G. Isn't that interesting? What's the beginning sound of sun? And she says S. That's interesting, because the sun is telling us that that letter says S. What do you think Mr. House is telling us? That's right. How about the apple? What does this letter say? What does this letter say? So you see where I'm going with this. From this point forward, when I know that Veronica understands this alphabetic principle, I am never going to tell Veronica what a letter says anymore. Why would I do that? Why in the world would I tell her what a letter says when she can figure it out herself? And in the process, become really, 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 really good at understanding at a very profound and deep level the alphabet. So we can go to the alphabet chart and she can tell me every single letter on that chart. What's the letter next to the jet, Veronica? Right, J. What's the letter next to the dog? Right, D. Thomas, do you have a question for me? Yes, what letter is this, Mr. Klein? Let's go over to the chart and find it. Oh, it's the letter right there that's next to the pear. So what letter do you think it is? P. Do not do for a child what he can do for himself. I mean, this is just so basic to me. It's just so basic. I want children to teach themselves the alphabet. And the way we deliver that to them is the opportunity with materials and games, activities, and beginning sound isolation. The hammer is asking us a question. The hammer is saying, where is the Okay, Veronica. Now, Veronica has shown me that she can tell me what every single letter is up here. Does that mean she knows it tomorrow? No. Does it mean she'll remember it? No. That she's learned it? No. It just means she understands it. Okay. So, what's the beginning sound of girl? G. Let's see if I can find where the G is. Oh, there it is. Your turn. Oh, you got an easy one, Veronica. Moon. There's a moon up there. So we know that that's the don't we? Okay. I'll let you have another turn, Veronica. What's the beginning sound of seal? And she says, S. And I'm going to have to pause for a minute. Will she be able to figure out where it goes? You see, the skill that she has to do this game is just beginning sound isolation. But the game itself, for a young child, can at first be a little complicated. So I have to take a turn, let Veronica take a turn, go back and forth until I can see that she actually understands how to play the game. Do another one, Veronica. Horse. Okay. So you get the idea here, right? These boys are teaching themselves the alphabet. That to me is Montessori. That is independence. That combines hands-on movement, choice of activity, repetition, repetition, repetition. Oh, Thomas, may I make it a little bit harder for you? Let's turn over those cards. So now we don't see the pictures, do we, at the top? Okay, your turn. What's the beginning sound of goose? Right, G. Let's find the G. What's the beginning sound of sun? S. Oh, there it is. Now think about this, ladies. This is multiple choice, isn't it? It's Montessori second period. Montessori's second period. Girl, G, G. Oh, there it is. You can see how a child would become very, very familiar with these sounds of these alphabet letters, right? They've seen the quite a few times now. I'm still not asking children to actually read letters. I'm asking them to recognize the sounds of those letters in a multiple choice, second period kind of activity. Where is the says the hat? There it is. You see, sometimes a teacher will raise her hand and say, well, you didn't teach from the W or the P yet. I say, yeah, well, why does he need to know those? I'm only interested right now that he have the repetition and the familiarity with the H and the S and the G. I teach the alphabet in clusters. So I think is an important concept for preschool classroom. For a preschool child who I'm just doing 5 letters at a time, clusters, I'm going to arrange my material so that this game only has certain answers. the AGHMS, right? But for a kindergarten, for a first or second grade child who maybe needs to brush up their alphabet sounds, I can give them the whole set, and that's fine. I actually believe that reading instruction is primarily supervised practice. I actually don't think that I'm teaching a child anything. I'm introducing things. I'm introducing new games, a series of new games, all based on beginning sound isolation. The fact of the matter is it takes children hundreds of exposures for a letter to become fully automatic in memory. They've got to have practice and repetition. They've got to be involved in activities that are interesting to them that they'll want to do again and again. It's another nice activity, even for first and second grade kids who need to brush up on their alphabet. I love repetition. I love repetition. Repetition is the healing balm of education. Okay, so I teach in clusters. My first cluster is AGHMS. It can be any cluster you want, really. I try to separate the 5 vowels because they sound and look so much alike. And I've got different games that they can choose after I introduce them. And of course, you can have any games you want that you like, but I recommend that you divide the game up so that it only involves 5 answers. And then I introduce another cluster. At this point, of course, the child is very aware of how to tell what a letter is. They're really good at getting the letter sound from the picture. And I can start introducing to them a whole series of games that they're already familiar with. Phoneme segmentation, let's talk about that. These skills that I have on the screen right now are the only 2 skills that you really need to teach a child to read. And that's beginning sound isolation and phoneme segmentation. Phoneme segmentation is the most important reading readiness skill of everything. There's nothing more important than phoneme segmentation. Can a child look at cat and say, at? B, u, t, ch, ch. Okay, Veronica, listen carefully. I'm hiding a picture and you cannot see it. I want to see if you can guess the picture I have. Watch my mouth. Up. Right, cup. Let's try another one. B, u, t. Correct, boot. And I hand her the card. Ch, ch. Correct, church. This is the blending game. I am giving children 3 phonemes and they're blending them together. Okay, Thomas, it's your turn. Now, Thomas has been playing this game for a while, and I'm going to make it harder for him. He's allowed me to make it more challenging. So, Thomas, okay, listen up, because I'm going to make it hard for you. G, oo, s. Right, goose. B, ah, x. Excellent, box. So you saw what I'm doing. I'm separating the sounds further and further apart. I'm not holding on to those sounds, by the way. Each phoneme is discrete, distinct, and crisp. With a young child who's just beginning, I'm going to keep the sounds really close together. G, o, t. Right, goat. B, d. Right, bird. And sometimes with a young child, I'll give them a choice of two pictures. Which one is ouch? Right, couch. And you get to looking at myself backwards. And I hand it to them and now they have couch, okay? So this is the blending game. It's a set of cards. Each card only has three, each picture only has three phonemes. That's why there are three circles. I'm giving them three phonemes and they're blending them together. And I'm making it more challenging by separating the sounds further and further apart. I can play the same blending game with bingo cards like this. It's actually a little bit easier because they can see the pictures. So with Charles, when it's his turn, I might say, Charles, close your eyes. Of course, I can see which images are on his card, right? Close your eyes, Charles. You have to say the word before you open your eyes. And then you can put your game piece on. B, s. And he says bus. Right. Now you can open your eyes and put your game piece on bus. So why are we doing this? Well, a young child will use blending when he begins to decode or sound out words, obviously. K, t. He has to sound those out. He has to blend those together and come up with the word cat. But the most important reason why I'm playing the blending game is because it teaches children how to segment. The entire time that I'm giving children three phonemes to blend, I'm modeling for their brain phoneme segmentation. Hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of the weeks and months, beginning, by the way, with 3-year-olds. I can play beginning sound bingo with children, and the same day later on, I can play the blending game where I'm teaching their brain how to segment. Phoneme segmentation is the most important reading readiness skill of everything, and we'll see why in a few minutes. Now, those of you who teach kindergarten, first, second grade, some of the cards that I have are really great for practicing their letter sounds. And it also involves phoneme segmentation, which needs to get better and better and better and better. Okay, my turn. Dog. D, a, g. Okay. D, a, g. Oh, there it is. So you see the game, obviously. It's pretty simple. So it allows the child to isolate the last sound because they can segment, and it then reinforces the sound of the letter G. It doesn't matter about the X and the L. It just forces their brain and their ear and their eye to go to that letter G and stamp it with that sound G. Cat, k, at, k, at. Oh, there's the t. Okay. Same thing with middle sound. All stems from phoneme segmentation. Fox, f, ox, f, ah. There it is. Now, I love this game because the 5 short vowels are the most difficult for children to read. But this is not an alphabet reading lesson, is it? It's alphabet recognition. And every time they recognize the ah or the ah, they're giving themselves the perfect sound. Whereas when they're reading those 5 vowels, sometimes they come up with the wrong sound. It's mushy or it just doesn't sound right. Ah, they say it perfectly when they segment it and then they put the game piece on there. I love that. Fox, ah, there it is. So it reinforces the sounds of the 5 vowels and it gives them great practice in phoneme segmentation. So just like beginning sound isolation is the open door to the alphabet, so phoneme segmentation is the open door to words and decoding. If Veronica can look at bus and say b, s, then she can take those sounds and put them on those letters. Does that mean she can decode? No. But it shows her what decoding is, doesn't it? So I created word pockets, little movable letters. Okay, Veronica, I'm going to introduce this new game to you. These are called word pockets. let's take the letters and spread them out. I'm going to take a turn first. Pig. P, I, G. P, I, G. Okay. See how I put the letters together? Now it's your turn, Veronica. And she says, P, I, G. So this is movable alphabet work, isn't it? It's encoding, one of the most brilliant concepts that Montessori gave to the world. Segmentation is what drives this activity. I strongly believe that children should not be doing movable alphabet work or word pocket work unless they can segment. I have too often seen teachers sitting on the floor with children, doing the movable alphabet with them, and spoon feeding them the sounds. Why? First of all, that teacher has so many other things that she needs to be doing. And sure, the teacher and the child love that warm exchange that they have working together on something that's so beautiful like the movable alphabet. But I don't want to do for a child what he can do for himself. Let's think about this for a second. Veronica doesn't really have to read those letters, does she? It's letter recognition. It's second period Montessori, isn't it? The pig is saying, where's the P? Oh, there it is. The pig is then saying, where's the I? Where's the G? Encoding words is the most important and probably the most important activity you can have in a classroom. And for those of you who teach first grade, second grade, kindergarten at the end of the year, building words with movable letters like this really reinforce the sounds of the alphabet again for the child without actually having to read them. Now, here is where the kid really has to be able to read letters. He's got to know those three letters or he's going to fail. My job is not to let the child fail, but to prepare him to know his alphabet so well that he's going to succeed at the task of decoding simple 3- and 4-letter words. Now, if you've ever seen me work with small groups of children, which is what I like to do when I go to schools, once I can see that a child can do word pockets, I give them one, then I give them a second one, then I give them a third one. And then I sometimes just mix up all 6 letters or all 9 letters. And then they have to build it. So there's different ways to make it more challenging. Or in one classroom where I was, they took 2 pictures and 6 letters and put them in a pocket. Or 3 pictures and 9 letters and put them in a pocket, just to make it so there's more repetition and there's more challenge, and not thinking, oh, he can do that, so I can go on to the next thing. No. I want children to do a lot of movable alphabet work, of encoding work. That's a little 4-year-old. The other thing about word pockets is that you'll have some children do lots of them. I've hardly ever seen a child do more than 3 or 4 or 5 words with the movable alphabet. That's just my experience. I like repetition. I want to see more without making a kid do more. This is the first time I started doing word pockets back in 1981. I got in trouble. That's not Montessori. Where's your movable alphabet? course, this is the standard movable alphabet you find in Montessori classrooms. Isn't that beautiful? This is also beautiful in its own way, isn't it? When you see a child do this work, you go, my gosh, that is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So the mom comes in, she's paying, I don't know how much a month to have her child go to this wonderful Montessori classroom. And she sees that. Now the teacher is thinking, man, I've been working so hard. This is beautiful. This kid did it on his own. Look at his smile. But what is the parent thinking? Well, the letter's upside down, backwards. How hard is it to keep your movable alphabet neat? So I'm not a big fan of the movable alphabet. So because for one thing, I can have 3- and 4-year-olds who are building words with movable letters, but to give them a whole movable alphabet that has 26 letters, that in many cases is disorganized and difficult to read, it doesn't, there's no isolation of difficulty, I guess is what my big point is. With a word pocket, you have isolation of difficulty. So I'm sure I'm stepping on some toes here, but you're tough, you can handle it. And everyone has their own opinion and their own way they want to do things. I think the movable alphabet is an amazing thing, and I do want it in the classroom, and especially in the Montessori classroom, because some children are going to be very attracted to it, and they'll really explore the different things they can build, and they'll just have great independent interest in it. It's just that I don't use it in order to teach children how to read. Spelling is reading instruction at the word level. Encoding is reading instruction at the word level. Movable alphabet work is reading instruction at the word level. Veronica, what are the sounds of bus? B-us, right. So let's move our finger and say those sounds. Ready? B-us, bus. Okay. Now I want you to take the sounds of sun and let's put them on those letters. Ready? S-n. So again, the phoneme segmentation is the driver of this engine. The child is taking the sounds and putting them on the symbols. That doesn't mean she's reading or decoding. It just means she's learning the mechanics of decoding. Let's find the word run. R-a-n. R-a-n, no. R-a-n, no. R-a-n, there it is. Let's put the game piece there. So I'm going from sound to symbol, from speech to print. Now, you might have a kindergarten kid who's decoding. He loves just to figure out words, and he's going to read all 3 words to find the right one. That's great. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But I want to introduce decoding to children who aren't ready to decode independently, because for one thing, they have to really, 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 really know their alphabet sounds well to do it. And for those children who are in kindergarten and 1st grade, whose letter sounds still are not strong, this is a great way to get them to use an image to help them figure out the sounds of those letters. When it's my turn, I always start with the picture and then go looking for the symbol to see what matches. So you could think of it as a mapping or a matching of sounds and symbols rather than decoding. So again, I never thought of it that way, but my first step in decoding is just matching sounds and symbols. But you have to be able to segment in order to do it. I love this game. A lot of teachers are very bewildered by it and don't like it until they see that the children love it and keep doing it again and again. So it's sort of like a movable alphabet. It's sort of like encoding words with little game pieces. So there's no word that's there that they can read, but it's not a reading activity. It's a mapping of sounds and symbols. Again, the phoneme segmentation is what drives the engine. Of course, we want to obviously have materials that don't have images, because the children really do need to practice just simply decoding. Let me show you something real quick. So I told you that when I first introduced these cards to Veronica, we're taking the sounds from sun and putting them on the symbol so she can practice decoding. And I've sort of got air quotes around the word decoding because it's not really decoding, is it? She's practicing the decoding of these new words by just looking at and having the picture help her to figure out what these say. I might actually give a set of 10 or 8 to a child and say, Thomas, go practice those. And when you're ready, come and tap me on the shoulder and I want you to read them to me. But when he reads them to me, he's going to read them without the picture. And then we turn the card over to see whether we're right or wrong. I don't need to correct them. The picture will correct them. Now, I love this game because I'll have a stack of cards on a table with some children and everyone takes a turn. And they have to read the word, decode the word, sound out the word, and then turn it over to see if they're right. If they're right, it goes into their pile. If it's wrong, it goes on the bottom. So it's fantastic practice at decoding, but it's sort of not me correcting a child. The picture corrects them if they got it wrong. It's very common that a child will go b-a-g, bog. And then they turn it over and go, oh, it's dog. So by the second or third time through, of course, they're gonna do this. They're gonna go b-a-g, and they're gonna pause and go, wait a minute, I've been here before. This isn't right. Oh, it's dog. And they get it right. And then eventually they start to say "b," but then they catch themselves and go, oh, okay, I know, I've been here before. It's the d-a-g. So anyway, I just love this game. I love this game. And I'll show you later another way that I play it. You're also going to want to have just cards with no pictures at all, just word lists. I don't know if you've had this experience, but when you have young children who are starting to decode and being successful, they love it. Success is very motivating. So we want to have different ways that they can decode 3-letter words. Now, I organize my environment so that all of the 3-letter work is all together on one tray or in one basket or on one shelf. It's not spread out. It's all together. Because if a kid can segment and he's been introduced to these various games, he can choose any of them he wants. So in this classroom in South Africa, you can see the oval down here. That little basket down, that little plastic box has all the different work that has 3 letters. And so the child is just working on 3 letters and he has choice of different games he can play. And when I feel like he's pretty successful, he doesn't have to be perfect, I can move him on to 4 letters. But not until I see some success and a certain level of mastery, but not entirely. This is a little bit premature for a lot of children, but I love these because once they're even decoding and reading quite well, they love to come back to these little slips and write the words when they're practicing their letters. I believe that teaching them how to write is really, really hard. So I personally always separate the teaching of handwriting from letter recognition, which of course, one reason why I don't use the sandpaper letters. sandpaper letters, I don't think have enough isolation of difficulty. Why are we teaching them? The sound of the letter, how to form the letter. You know, it's too many different things in one. Plus, there's no picture on the sandpaper letter to tell them child what that letter says. They have to literally memorize it or learn it, or they don't know what it is. I'd be happy to send you the digital files of these if you think you'd like to use them for your classroom. Oh, let's see. So here we have, what do we have here? Hold on. We have 3-letter words, 4-letter words, silent E, I want to prepare a child to work with 4-letter words. Now, the main preparation he's had to work with 4-letter words is just simply what he's been doing. He's getting really, really, really good at the sounds of his letters. And he understands all the different games I've shown him, but I do want to help him further by playing the blending game with 4 sounds. S, w, I, m. Swim. T, e, n, t. Tent. L, a, m. P. Right. Lamp. Now, 4 sounds is a lot harder than 3 sounds. One thing that I forgot to mention before is when I play the blending game with 3 sounds, at some point, if I have a child that can segment or is beginning to be pretty good at it, I'm going to let him have the cards and give me 3 sounds. And I have to guess what picture he has. So I want him to practice his phoneme segmentation, and I can hear how he does it, how discreet or careful he is with his sounds, and I can help him with that. So, but 4 letters is much harder than 3 letters. So it's going to take a while, and it's not going to, and I can play the bingo game again with 4 sounds so they can get used to hearing 4 sounds and blending those together. I don't believe in teaching children blends per se. I teach them, I want to help them separate those blends. You can see stop is asking the child to find the first 2 letters, which are, of course, the blended sounds. He has to pull the S apart from the T to figure out what it is. And that's a little bit hard. So to me, this is more of a phoneme segmentation activity than it is teaching them specific blends. So now the child can go through a series of games that he can choose that are the same games that he's familiar with, but now he's using 4 letters. This is a common mistake because the phoneme segmentation of 4 sounds is actually harder, much harder than 3 sounds, but that's okay. They'll start to figure stuff out. We can correct them gently. We can help them. One time a child held up that R and said, Mr. Klein, why is this here? Well, of course, it's a phonemic error, so to speak. The child couldn't grab the R that was next to the K, but that's okay. She'll get it. Now, here's where the cards become really handy, because by the time a child is at 4-letter words, they're pretty good with their alphabet. So even if they can't segment 4 sounds, they know their alphabet pretty well. So they can start reading these 4 letters, blending them together to figure out what the word is. So it's just really, really good decoding practice. And of course, their letter recognition gets even stronger and stronger. Reading problems primarily occur at the word level. When I'm working with a 2nd or 3rd or 4th grade child, or a 7th grade child or a high school kid that's really struggling. In most cases, believe it or not, their reading problem or their what they're struggling with is at the word level. So what you're doing with those 3, 4, and 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds in your preschool classroom is giving them very, very strong word identification skills, decoding skills. So they're really focusing on words. And that is going to help them as they move through more challenging things. I do like to have even more challenging decodable texts like 5- and 6-letter words. I'll just go through these quickly. Of course, we want to introduce them to connected text. And we do have to spend some time teaching them some of the sight words or dolch words or high frequency words so that they can start to work with short vowel phrases, sentences. And of course, decodable text, decodable readers. I personally like the primary phonics books, which is a nice series that they can go through. This is my first goal, is to get them to read set 1 of the primary phonics. That means that they're decoding 3- and 4-letter words quite well. They've had some practice with sentences. And phrases. That's why I want to get them here so they can start reading, because they really want to read books, don't they? But my next thing is to start working with, for me personally, I love Silent E as the next step, because it's really easy. It's really easy. And the children can teach themselves just by doing the work. Little girl built the word tap. She thought she was building the word tape, because tape only has 3 phonemes, right? Tape. So she took the T and the A and the P, and then she had the E in her hand, and it's like she's saying, well, why is this here? Ah, okay, let me show you why. That's the word tap. Let me show you how to make it say tape. So you can teach however you want, you can introduce it however you want, but actually it's pretty self-explanatory. Once a child is taught about the silent E, then they have activities that they can do, and they can start to teach themselves to recognize that silent E that's stuck at the end. I believe in teaching children how to teach themselves things. So I know that Montessori classrooms generally have a whole sequence of phonograms that they go through, and that's fine. That's fine. It's really hard to have enough materials organized well for children to move through a sequence of phonograms. The thing that I try to get across to teachers in Montessori and other and public school teachers, private school teachers, is if you give them materials that they can use, they can start to teach themselves things. So if they can segment goat, they go go. Well, it's pretty simple. That's pretty obvious what they're going to choose next, right? Does that mean that they know the OA? No. Does it mean they'll remember it tomorrow? No. But it's a good introduction that's done by the child himself. So these are some activities that allow the child to work with new orthographic features like double, 2-letter phonograms. By this point, children are really good at decoding, and they're reading decodable text and having fun with it. Remember, the image is what drives the activity always. Unless the child actually wants to read all 3 words, that's fine. But the image of car is basically saying, okay, Thomas, I want you to find R. So he has to go to each of the words below and map those sounds on to figure out which is the right answer. I'm going to take questions in just a minute. I'm just going to finish up here with a couple more slides. Appreciate you being patient with me, letting me rant away, lecture. This is a set of high frequency nouns. Now, high frequency nouns are not the most high frequent words in the English language, but they're the most frequent nouns in the English language. And I chose the one that I can get an image for. So the activity here is that the child can teach themselves how to read these things without necessarily having been taught all of the new phonograms involved. The picture of ball will tell the child how to read ball. The picture of table that will teach the child who can segment quite well how to read the word table. So then when they turn the card over and there's no picture there, they can start to practice and figure things out.
Randall, I do have a question. This is Brett Peterson. I have a question on how you would deal with a child that comes into Montessori, maybe let's just say 3. You're teaching them word sounds, but they have already been taught the ABCs. So say you have a child that knows the symbol is an A and a B and a C. How would you then reverse to the sound? So for instance, today I was sitting with a child. She doesn't know the sounds, but she knows that it's an A and it's an M and it's an H. So getting that to reverse to sounds.
What was the activity?
We were doing sandpaper letters. So what it was testing their mini sandpaper letters. And then you would do like sailboat. And then I said, what's the sound? And so she would say S. And so I had to be like,
what was she looking at?
So what you would do is you'd line up, like with S, you would do sailboat, seal. So it was objects, matching the sound with objects.
Okay.
So her mom is very active, so she knows all of the lettered names, but not the sounds.
Can she isolate beginning sounds? Can she look at hammer and say,
yes, so she'll say hammer. Mm-hmm.
So she can say,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I see what you're saying. She wants to refer to those letters by their names.
Mm-hmm.
But if I take a turn and say, okay, it's my turn, hammer, where's the, she might point to that and say, that's an H, that's fine. As long as she knows that the from hammer, that's where it goes. I guess my answer is we want to provide activities for the child so that forces them to work with sounds. Because the picture of hat doesn't start with H, it starts with. So I wouldn't worry so much about breaking her of the habit. I would worry more about making sure she has an activity where it's forcing her, and I mean, I'm putting force in quotation marks, I'm not really going to be mean to a child, forcing her to deal with sounds. And that's where the images come in. So I'm trying to imagine the activity that you were talking about. There's a bunch of objects that all start with S, and there's one letter S. Were there other letters?
No, just the S. So we were just doing, so you want to do other letters?
Well, I I never choose direct instruction ever. I always choose something where the child is doing it themselves and there's multiple choice. So
Okay.
an activity like this, I'll put it back on the screen. To me, is more appropriate. It's a matter of choosing, okay, now which images do you want to choose? Well, I know what I choose because I have these clusters that I use. You're trying to teach her a letter, is what you're trying to do. And she already knows her letters. So now let her learn them in the way that we need her to learn them, is with sounds. I'm not sure if I'm really answering your question the way you want it answered.
You are. So it's just when the child, so she struggles at certain sounds and identifying that an S makes a S sound. So we're just trying to help her with her sounds because she knows that the letter S is an S. But if you say, what sound does this make? She'll just look at you like with a blank stare.
Well,
So,
okay. That's a repetition will heal that.
okay, perfect.
We're not trying to get her to memorize anything. We're trying to get her to know something, which is to me different.
Mhm. So
again, this is tricky, but if she has enough practice with materials, would force her to say because the picture, the image is saying sun, sailboats, seals. She'll get it.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to, if you've ever seen that, and I'm sure that's.
Oh, well, I hear that all the time from public school teachers. I mean, I have kids who do know the alphabet names, but that doesn't help them.
Exactly. I guess it just reinforces, so I'm new and I'm interning. It just reinforces how, I guess, how when you don't want to teach the ABCs, you want to teach the sounds. And so she's new to our classroom and it was so apparent because the rest of our kids all know sounds, but now we're forced to we have to redirect because she's been in a daycare, new to Montessori, and she's older. Yeah.
But think of it as a big advantage she's got, because believe me, there are a lot of professors, a lot of educated researchers that are telling everyone children need to know letter names and sounds. I just simply don't buy that. I think there's research that proves that it helps, but doesn't help me. My job is to make sure this kid can decode. That doesn't help me. So anyway, but having said that, you're an intern in someone's classroom. So we always tell, from Agent Montessori, we always tell people, you're there to support your teacher in the classroom. So however she wants you to do it, I want to support her in that. So I want to just make sure that you understand. I don't want to step on too many toes. That would be a big no-no if I'm telling you to do something that your classroom lead teacher really would prefer you do it differently. So make sure you're conferring with her.
Interesting that you notice, interesting thing to notice where you're like, that's why. It's just one of those things that reinforces the sound versus the letter, the name of the letter.
All right. Anybody else have a question? First of all, I'm not a specialist or an expert in speech things, but I've talked to enough speech therapists to know that it's not my job to be the speech therapist for the child. Therefore, it's not my job to try to get the child to say the sound correctly. That's not my job. It'll either be corrected naturally or he will have speech therapy or whatever. But what I want to say is this. If I say to a child who cannot pronounce these sounds correctly, let's just say he can't say the g, okay? Or maybe he says the S with a lisp. It's not my job to teach him how to say the S correctly. It is my job to say, Thomas, where's the S? And I bet he'll choose the right answer. Where's the A? There it is. Where's the G? So everything needs to be second period, second period, second period, second period, second period recognition, multiple choice. That's something that I want you to think about, reflect on, and see whether that makes sense to you. That's how I would approach it. I'm not saying, again, I'm not giving you some big answer that's going to solve everything. I'm just saying, look at it this way. Give the child choice of letter sounds, and if he's been introduced to the sounds of the alphabet correctly, he will always choose the right answer. So whether or not he can say the G, the question is, can he slice off a beginning sound from goat, even if doesn't sound correct? That's what you want to find out. And if you say, Thomas, what is the beginning sound of goat? And he comes up with a sound that it's not really very good, he'll still, in his mind, it's the right sound. And he'll put that sound on here. So when you say to him later, where's the G, he will choose it correctly. Does that make sense? I think the answer is second period. Let me think of another example here. Where is the D? Well, if he's been taught about if he can isolate beginning sounds, even if they're not correctly spoken, he will be able to figure out that that's the D. So I think you should explore that and start asking the right questions. Instead of asking him, what does that letter say? Asking him which letter says T, which letter says K. Don't ask a question that a child can't answer correctly. Only ask questions that you know he can answer correctly. Otherwise, you're testing him. We're not in the business of testing children. So that's where multiple choice is also your best friend, second period, and also really knowing what he does know and what he doesn't know. But when he gets to a point where he's asked to read a word, I mean, reading is nothing but a bunch of tests. Everything is a test when you're asking a child to read a word. Those are 3 tests right there. He's going to be tested enough his entire life, because that's what reading is. It's testing us. Do I know that sound, that sound, that sound? Let's blend them together. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, and I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but the 2 principles are always try to think in terms of second period, and try never to ask a question that you don't know or are pretty sure that the child can answer. That's pretty good advice right there, because you don't want him to fail and you're not trying to test him. So can a child isolate beginning sounds? Yes or no? In this particular boy you're thinking of, can he isolate beginning sounds even if he doesn't say them correctly? You're not in the business of teaching him how to say those sounds. Although, you can learn. There's a lot of things we can do as teachers to really help children articulate better, but it's not really our job to begin with. Can they isolate beginning sounds? Give them practice doing it. Explain to them how they can figure out what every letter says just by looking at a picture. That's the alphabetic principle. Again, it doesn't involve whether he says the sounds correctly. It's, does he understand this? And then give him activities where he can start to use his beginning sound isolation. You'll see right away, either he's right or he's wrong. Either he can look at hammer and figure out that the beginning sound somehow fits up here or not. How old is this little boy? Can you hold up your finger and show me? Is he 3 or 4 or 5? 4, okay. He's probably still young. So, play with some different games and see. This game may not be the best game to begin with. This might be a better choice. So, and then this is the art of teaching, is sort of withdrawing when something's not going well. Go, okay, I'm in the wrong place. I'm asking him the wrong questions. The only right question is for a child is if you know he can answer it correctly. Well, no, I don't have any materials in cursive. I'm not going to make materials in cursive. I can see where this might be a problem where you're asking children to learn to read letters, but you actually want them, I'm assuming you want them to read cursive letters, not just learn how to write them. So I'm not a big fan of the cursive thing. I think it's hard enough to teach children how to read and write without having to also add another huge, again, I'm stepping on toes, I'm sorry. Another huge challenge for the teacher to actually do it with cursive. It sounds great, it looks great. And if you're having success, then God bless you, fantastic. But I've been in enough Montessori classrooms around the country to know that it's hard. And I was a Montessori preschool teacher. It's hard doing what you do. And then I think the cursive thing can be very, very hard for some teachers. And maybe you've also found that in your own school, that some teachers get there and go, oh, okay, I can't do this. So I'm sort of haven't really answered your question, except that no, I don't have cursive. I do believe in personally separating the writing from the learning of the sounds of the alphabet. Because if you're using a sandpaper letter and you're teaching them how to trace a cursive letter and teach them the sound, which one are you doing? Are you teaching them how to write the F or to say the F? To remember the F or to remember how to trace the F? I mean, it's a lot there. There's just no isolation of difficulty. I'm sorry, there isn't. So I personally believe that I want to separate the writing of letters, the learning how to form the letter, from the learning of the sounds. And so what I did in one of the more successful years that I had, and I had a really excellent assistant who really loved the teaching of handwriting, is that once a child knew the alphabet and was starting to decode, then we got great success with then focusing on the writing of the letters because they already knew them. They're like old friends. So they were able to remember the formation of them in a much better way. So I don't know how to solve the problem of all my materials are cursive or not cursive, but you want them to learn to read cursive. So, I never knew that, and I apologize that I didn't know that. And I hope that you can take the principles that I feel are important that I've teach about, and then use them with your cursive stuff. So I didn't really answer your question, did I? But I sure gave lots of opinions. There's a lot of research that shows that we want children to learn cursive because it can solve certain kinds of problems. But I'm an advocate for the teacher as much as I'm an advocate for the child. And that's why I have fairly strong opinions about not wanting to do cursive, because it just adds a level of complexity that many Montessori teachers can't handle. And I wouldn't expect them to. But when schools do tackle it and make a go of it, it is amazing. I mean, there's nothing bad about it at all. So keep going.